Hello and welcome to the Spargur Yarn Crafts channel. My name is Will Spargur. I am your host. This is part 3 of this week's podcast, which is my sewing updates. I have 3 really cool things to show you that I'm really proud of. And so for those of you who are new, thank you so much for coming to my channel. I usually do knitting and crochet, and that's how this kind of all started, but recently I've really been into sewing, so I kind of just make this a fiber podcast now. It's a little hard to change the name every so often that I decide to tackle a new craft, though, so anywho, if you're new, thank you so much for joining me. You can find all of my social links in the video description box below. If you are returning, thank you so much for coming back and joining me for the sewing portion of this podcast. Let's just go ahead and jump right in. Last time I talked about anything sewing related that was a quilt, I mentioned that I had made a pride quilt, because I didn't really have anything that was kind of pride related. And I think I had shown the fabric, but I'd never shown the quilt top or the finished quilt. So I'm not going to unfold this all the way, because you'll get a pretty good idea. But this is a twin-sized quilt, and this is the first one I did with cotton batting instead of polyester batting. And I'm really proud of it, and I did use this on my bed for a while, but as it is in the middle of a heat wave here in Vegas, I am currently just using a sheet on my bed because it is that hot. It is currently about 11:30 in the morning, right now, and it is about 87 degrees in my garage. And this is about as cool as it gets, which is why we're doing this now. Okay, so here is the quilt. We've got different things. We've got some unicorns. We just got some solid colors, and then some rainbows, and then some like splatter rainbow colors. There's different solid colors in here. There's yellow, orange, and then we have pink, and this is actually purple, a very light purple, kind of like a lavender. And then the back is actually just plain blue, and it is a bed sheet that I got at Goodwill for $2, I think. And the binding also has rainbows on it. Come on, focus on the blanket and not on my head. There we go. So there's rainbows on the binding as well. This one is hand bound, and I think I did it in about 2 days. It didn't take too long to hand bind. Now, the bottom of the blanket, I did not do all of that ridiculous straight line quilting. I did leave it a little more open. Come on. So you can see more of the fabric. I did that because it was just getting so hard to push through the machine. I was getting tired of doing it. And honestly, it was a lot of quilting and it just felt over quilted, so I stopped worrying about it and just did to the left and right of every seam all the way through. So yeah, that's the first quilt I had finished. The second one, I call this my Goodwill quilt. I found this quilt at Goodwill. It had been, the top had been done, and it had been basted to the backing, but it had not been bound or quilted. So this is what I found. It's a log cabin style quilt. And this one I did some non-traditional stitching. I did X's through all the quilt blocks. And then I also did left and right of every vertical and horizontal seam. And then I actually machine bound this one with some polyester cotton blend fabric that I had. I didn't worry so much about making this one perfect. It was just something I had gotten at Goodwill for $5. Personally, I was kind of thinking, this is something that someone had started and maybe had passed away and the family didn't know what to do with it, so they just donated it thinking maybe it was finished. So I decided to purchase it and finish it, just because I think handmade items are so thoughtful, and they're thoughtfully made, and there's nothing like having a handmade item. And this quilt is a beautiful handmade item that somebody just didn't get to finish. And I kind of felt like it was, I don't know, I just kind of felt like it was so, I don't want to say disrespectful, because that's not the word, but it just feels sad that it never got finished and that somebody I don't know the circumstances, but it kind of feels like you gave something away because you didn't know what to do with it, and you didn't really think about how much thought and love went into what it was. And I'm not saying maybe they didn't care, or maybe they just didn't know. And that's fine. Could have been a distant relative and they didn't understand. And but it didn't need to sit in Goodwill. And I was kind of sad to see that it was there. So I decided to purchase it and finish it, and now it is a wonderful addition to my home. And there's a couple places I need to fix because I messed up a little bit, but I'm really happy that I decided to purchase this and finish it. It has been through the wash. It's very soft. The batting they used was a nice high loft polyester, so it's nice and thick and warm and soft, and it drapes really well. And I'm really happy to have this. And I kind of, sometimes when I'm using it, I think about, I wonder who it was that made it, and whether or not they know what happened to this. So, oops, dog hair. A lot of dog hair. So yeah, I have this. I finished it. It's very nice. And yeah, I keep it on my bed for those rare instances that it does get a little cooler. And obviously, the dogs love it too. Blech. Got it. Okay. I'll fold that back up in a minute. The last thing I have is my next quilt block, or quilt top. I finished a quilt top, and I have been using Just Get It Done Quilts on YouTube. Her name is Karen Brown. I love her channel. She's, I'd say middle-aged woman, maybe in her 50s. And she has the best tips and tricks for quilting, and I love everything that she talks about and all of the things that she goes over. Goodness gracious, which dog was shedding that much? My dog is supposed to be hypoallergenic. Anyway, she has a lot of really cool tips and tricks, and I love her videos, and I've been following them for a while. And as you could see from most of my previous quilts, I've done a lot of rectangles and a lot of squares and just sewn them together, and that's kind of been how it goes. So this one, I finally felt like I had the confidence to tackle something new and different, and I have to say, I am extremely pleased. It's not perfect. It is absolutely not perfect, but it is very close to perfect, and I am thrilled with how this turned out. So I'm gonna try and show you as much of this as I can. So we've got all of this. So it is symmetrical, so I don't have to hold it all the way up. But we've got all of these different quilt blocks that just went together so beautifully. And I do have a slow motion video on my Instagram of me doing the quilt top drop. So you can see this in all of its glory. It's also on TikTok. If you have TikTok, you can find me there. And this is also on there. But I am just thrilled with this quilt top. And I cannot wait to quilt it. I am so excited to quilt it. So this uses 3 fat quarter packs. It was so each pack had 5 fat quarters, 5 matching or coordinated fat quarters, and I had 3 of the same pack. But in order to get the size quilt that I needed, I was going to need a few more fat quarters. So I picked a solid black, and I had 3 of those, and then I had 2 that had sewing patterns and stuff on it. So I grabbed 2 of those. That I had 2 of those in my stash, and I think it went well because one of the coordinated ones was kind of like blue and white flowers. So I thought that went really well. And I matched all of these up, made the quilt blocks that I wanted to make. Karen had on her website a downloadable PDF of the different types of quilt blocks you can make with squares, rectangles, half square triangles, and quarter square triangles, and how you could put all of those together to make all of these really cool different quilt blocks. So I downloaded that, and I picked the ones that I wanted to do with the, kind of the things that I felt like I could make. And then I made the quilt blocks. I trimmed them all down to whatever the smallest block ended up being, which I think was 7.5 inches on an edge, 7.5 by 7.5. And then I laid them out on my floor, and I was kind of thinking about how I could make bigger blocks with the smaller blocks and then use the filler blocks to kind of fill everything in. And after I had my layout, I sewed it all together. I think I did this in approximately 12 hours of total sewing time, and 8 of those hours were on one day. So I am extremely thrilled with how this turned out, and I cannot wait to get it basted and get it into the machine so that I can start quilting it. I'm going to do some basic quilting because I think the blocks themselves are gorgeous on their own, and I don't think they need much quilting. So I'm going to kind of stick with the main seams and maybe some of the diagonal seams in there as well. But yeah, extremely thrilled with how this turned out, and I can't wait to show you the finished quilt. I do have some more quilts planned in the future. I bought some jelly rolls, so I am going to do a jelly roll quilt. And then I did buy some more fabric recently, so I have some more sewing patterns kind of in mind, or things that I want to do. There's this wonderful kind of ice cream and sweets fabric that I bought, and I think I'm going to do a teddy bear out of that. I haven't decided yet, but I have a few more teddy bears that I want to sew as well. Again, I'm trying to use up all of this stuffing. But yeah, anyway, those are my sewing updates. Thank you so much for joining me. Tomorrow we're going to have my life updates for this week, and then that will be it for this week's podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you again here very soon. Bye.